In this episode, the terrific hockey broadcaster Paul Romanuk stops by to tell stories of the World Juniors beginnings and the Spengler Cup. We also discuss how well the New York Islanders are playing and how a Champions League might work in hockey. For Team ISO, we invite Trey Matthews and Robert Aitken Jr. to break down the New Jersey Devils' problems. Hit the music. Welcome to Jablam Sports Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Borjaranov, and the mic is always on. You can find me on Twitter at Russia98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on the three dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with three hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website, go to jablamsports.com, see all our podcasts, and even game notes for each episode. You'll get links to all the things we mentioned on this show, including guests. For our podcasts, click on podcasts, and then hockey on this show specifically right on our website. Time for some trending now. Today on the show, we have a terrific guest, a person I've looked up to a little bit growing up. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't know. Maybe I'm breaking the rules here. I'm an awful journalist. Paul, am I an awful sports journalist or what? I can't say that. Am I supposed to say that?
No, you're the best kind of sports journalist. You're just being yourself. That's always the best result you're going to get.
All right. I asked you to come on the podcast to talk about trending topics. And of course, I always end up changing it up when I have somebody that I actually love talking to or know a fair bit about. And of course, on the show, it is Paul Romanuk. He's had many years broadcasting hockey and NHL action on different broadcasts. Most of you know him from doing play-by-play on Hockey Night in Canada for Sportsnet, as well many great years at TSN covering World Juniors and, of course, Spengler Cup tournaments. You can find him on Twitter at _RamiCast, and that's where you can find his new show, The Walrus Was Paul podcast. You can find the podcast and more information on our episode page, and this episode is Season 6, Episode 14, and of course you can go to his website, www.ramicast.com, or even on Facebook. You got the Facebook group as well there, Paul. I even caught a few episodes, and it sounds like a great music show. You have some terrific guests. I think you had Tim Bovacanti on the show, recent guest, and he's from my hometown, Toronto.
Okay.
But you're close enough from the schwa, so how did that episode go?
It was really good. It's, the podcast is for Beatles fans or music fans, but if you love the Beatles, you'll love the podcast. I have on a Canadian music person. Tim Bovacanti was one. I had on Jim Cuddy from Blue Rodeo, Mo Berg from Pursuit of Happiness, a bunch of Stephen Page from the Bare Naked Ladies, Tyler Stewart from the Bare Naked Ladies, and they come on and they talk track by track about their favorite Beatles or Beatles solo record. So we kind of nerd out and get into the particulars of the albums and the songs. But if you love music and you like hearing musicians talk about music, it's a good podcast. So give it a listen, and you can find it wherever you get your podcast. It's called The Walrus Was Paul.
What is your favorite track of the Beatles?
You know what? It depends. Like many Beatles fans will tell you, or music fans, what day of the week it is and what kind of mood I'm in. I like, all their music. Lately, I've been listening a lot to the later stuff. I was listening to Let It Be yesterday, which, is a really good album. But I don't know that I could ever pick one. It's like when somebody asks you, what's the favorite game that you called? It depends what day it is and what kind of mood you're in. So that's what I'm like with the Beatles.
What game is your favorite? All right. So we will get into some trending topics, of course, with hockey and Tampa Bay, and are they cap circumventing over there, and the Islanders are on fire. So we're going to get to that. But a friend of the podcast, Jeff Merrick, he told me that you're such a wonderful person and talented broadcaster. And of course, myself too. And I was also contemplating what I wanted to ask you about. And about all those great World Junior tournaments. What were the first World tournaments like when it first started?
Well, the interesting thing about the World Junior that I always tell people is I was in on it right at the beginning. I hosted the first World Junior Championship on TSN. I was a co-host with Bob McKenzie. And then after that, I called every World Junior from 1991 until 2001. And included in that were the 5 gold medals in a row that they won in the 90s, which was the first time they'd ever done that. But to answer your question, when it started off, just to give people an idea, because now it's just completely all, beyond recognition of what it was when they started to do it on TSN, and I was a part of it back then. We did not broadcast every single Canadian game in the tournament, never mind every single game. And I can remember going overseas in the early days to Foos in Germany, to Gävle in Sweden, and broadcasting being what it is, they were so cheap about what they wanted to spend on it. They didn't even send a host. So I went and I was the play-by-play guy and the host. We didn't start sending a host, which was Gord Miller back then, to the tournament until I want to say the mid-90s. So it wasn't this huge big deal. Now it gradually built momentum, and I think, Peter, the reason it turned into this sort of colossus that it is now is really simple. It's because Canada got good at the tournament. Canada started to win. They used to go and have relative success, but they weren't powerhouses at the tournament. It was the old Soviet Union that was the powerhouse at the tournament. Canada didn't win it very often, but there was the breakup of the Soviet Union and the dissolution of the great Soviet hockey program, which opened a door for Canada. And it was also the rise of Canada's program of excellence. And they started to have success and they started to win. And of course, Canadians, like every other hockey fan in the world, they're front runners.
Mm-hmm.
They want to cheer for the team that's winning. So they got into the habit of turning the TV on at Christmas and watching Canada kick the crap out of a bunch of countries and win a gold medal. And people love that. I maintain that had they just been mediocre through the 90s, it wouldn't have turned into what it is now. It happened because they were good at it and they won and people loved it. And it became a holiday season tradition, which it is now.
Then who could you point a finger at and say, this is the person that put Canada on the map and made them start winning all those championships and turned it all around and made a big spectacle of it that it is today?
You could never pick one single person. Certainly as an organization, I would point to Hockey Canada. And I guess if I did have to single out one person, it would be Bob Nicholson, who took over from Murray Costello back in the late 80s, early 90s. The tournament in Fusen in, I want to say, 1991, was a disaster. That was the year Eric Lindros was parachuted in at the last moment. Rick Kornacki was the head coach along with Tom Rennie. They weren't even speaking by the end of the tournament. It was a disaster. And Bob Nicholson was there. And they took so many learnings from the mistakes they made in that tournament and said, okay, we're going to get good at this. And the program of excellence started. And what you saw gradually happen was there was this thread that ran all the way through the elite programs. So under 16, under 18, that ran all the way up. They were all on the same page. And then what you started to see in the later 90s was guys who'd come up all the way through that program. So they knew the deal when they went to a big international tournament. You couldn't take bad penalties. You had to play with discipline. You had to put the team first. All these things that we take for granted now, they were put into place by the program of excellence. And that was mainly Bob Nicholson. So I give him a lot of credit.
What were some of your favorite moments? Is there one that really sticks out?
Well, for the World Junior, it was the 5 gold medals in a row because it had never happened. So that I think of that as sort of one great run where they got it going. I think the first one was in Yavla, the last one was in Geneva, and they won it 5 times in a row. Then in '99, I want to say in Winnipeg, they lost in the semifinals or in the final to Russia.
Mm-hmm.
That brought an end to but they had this great run. I may have some dates mixed up because it's been a while, but it was those 5 in a row, and it was really exciting to be a part of that. There were some great players and great games to call, and it's something that I'm really glad I was a part of.
I was reading about how you transitioned to Europe, and I believe it was your wife for getting an opportunity over there, and you went and started working for the Spengler Cup, which I always thought was very interesting and unique. And okay, I have to geek out in terms of I have this idea, and I've always wanted it would to be a Champions League of hockey. And I guess the closest thing you can kind of get it to is Spengler Cup, but it's not as well known or at least pushed over here in North America. Uh, what do you think of the impact is on Spengler Cup, and especially how little of it is in North America?
Well, the Spengler Cup was an interesting thing, and again, it sort of came out of my involvement. Came out of the World Junior. We would go over to Europe all those years. It wasn't like it is now, where it seems like the World Junior is in Canada every other year. It used to be it didn't come to Canada as often, so you'd be in Europe, and the Spengler Cup is on at the same time. So we would have Eurosport on in the hotel room watching this tournament. Fantastic fans, great hockey, great atmosphere. And I remember saying to a colleague, geez, wouldn't it be great if that was on TV in Canada? I think people would like this. And so, fast forward ahead a bunch of years, and I was no longer at TSN, and I got a group of guys together, of a couple of colleagues, and we got the rights for the Spengler Cup, and we got it on Sportsnet. And it's turned into it's no World Junior, but it's something that people watch, and that was something that I was a huge part of. A, getting it on the air, and B, helping to build that up. I think it's a fantastic tournament. It's not a Champions League tournament just because of the kind of wonky format where teams are allowed to pick up players from other teams, and Canada is sort of a quasi-national team, even though you have Canadians playing on some of the other club teams. So it would never work that way. But there was a proper Champions League over in European hockey that I was part of when I was living over in London. And it was put together by some investors from Russia and Sweden, and in cooperation with the International Ice Hockey Federation. And it was just a fantastic year of hockey. It was just like Soccer Champions League. They had all the champions from the various leagues, including the KHL, and they played this tournament. The Zurich Lions won the first Champions League tournament, but unfortunately, the 2008 economic crash wiped it out, and the investors did not come back to run it for a second year, and that's a real shame, because I agree with you. There's a huge hole there for a Champions League. You'd need to get the NHL on side as well, and I think the NHL can be very provincial in their thinking. So you probably wouldn't see it, but it would be fantastic. I think hockey fans would love it.
Just spitballing here, how is it possible if it could work? When could they schedule it? I don't know. I'm just trying to think.
Well, it would take a complete rethink of how the NHL and hockey is run. It could be done, but it would take a complete rethink, and that's why it's unlikely to happen. Mm-hmm. But you do it the exact same way that they do the Champions League over in Europe with football, or soccer as we call it, and that is you halt. It's played during the season. It's a parallel competition with the league. So they'll play 2 weeks or 3 weeks of the Premiership or the Bundesliga or whatever, and then they take a week off, and that week all of the clubs that are in the Champions League go and play Champions League games. You could do the same thing. The NHL plays along, and they halt league play for a week, and let's say the top 5 NHL teams from the previous season are in the Champions League, and they go and they play in the Champions League competition. Then they come back and they play in the NHL again. But again, that's a very European approach, and there are many parallel competitions that go on in European sports. We don't do that here. We come in and we drop the puck on the first day of the season and we play the whole league, and then we stop and then we play the playoffs, and that's the way we do it, and that's the way we've done it for 100 years, and that's likely the way we'll keep on doing it for another 100.
I would love to see it, and in my mind, I'm thinking of other teams loaning guys to other teams. Like McDavid gets loaned and to a team of the Maple Leafs with Matthews, and it would be outstanding to see the top players play with other top players against top players that we don't get to see from the other leagues.
Yeah, it would, it is what it is. It's the Champions League of hockey. The 1 year I called the games for that league for the 1 year when I was living in Europe, and it was fantastic hockey. And part of the fun was, they'd never had this before. You had the Zurich Lions, the top club team in the Swiss league, going up and playing against Jönköping, one of the top teams from the Swedish league, or playing against Jokerit from the Finnish league, or playing against Magnitogorsk from the Russian KHL. And it's really cool to watch all. How would the Stanley Cup champions fare in a one-off Champions League game against the champions from the KHL? Who knows? I don't know. Hockey fans would love to watch.
Yeah, and it would be a totally different style, maybe a little more European, maybe some more open ice, and that would be unique to see some guys with more open ice. Let's get into some current NHL action, and everybody's talking about how the Islanders are on fire right now. Barry Trotz has got this team running, I don't know, to like a 200% level. Like, nobody thinks that they can take this team that far. But Lou Lamoriello, Barry Trotz has this team of, other than Matthew Barzal, not full of superstars. But they're first in division, and last time I checked, they might be first in the league in percentage points, or at least in points. Are they top contenders? Or was what we saw in the bubble playoffs not as great as how they are, but they look fantastic so far?
I mean, I think a couple things to look at, Peter. That's a good division, right? I mean, you can, in the East, you can write off the Rangers, and then you got 5 good teams going for 4 spots, right? Islanders are playing well. Those 9 wins, though, you got to look at, 7 of those 9 wins came against New Jersey and Buffalo. So, okay, take that with maybe not a bushel basket of salt, but a grain of salt. And then one of them was against Boston in a shootout. But still, 9 wins is 9 wins. I think a couple of things. The next 12 games, it's going to be a real test for them, right? They're going up against playoff contenders. They got the Caps. They got 3 against Philadelphia, so that's going to be tough. But the big wild card, and I haven't heard anything yet, I don't know if you have, but is going to be Anders Lee. 12 goals, leads the team, down with an injury. So what's going to happen here? Well, we got to find out, are they going to put him on the long-term injured reserve list? Because if they do that, that'll open up a bit of cap space for them and some wiggle room to maybe do something to fill that hole at the trade deadline. But if he doesn't go on long-term injured list, they don't have that luxury. They don't have the cap space. And what are you going to do, and when is he going to come back, and how will he be when he does come back? So I think that's a real wild card that you have to throw into the mix. But yeah, to your point, full marks to Barry Trotz. And if there's a guy who can juggle around the roster with salary cap, we know Lou Lamoriello is an absolute master at it. So if anybody can get them through with some this guy's out, this guy's that, it's Lou Lamoriello who can do it.
The way this team is with their structure, and of course because of management and how well they've done it, no matter what happens, they seem to still fill in the holes. And even right before last game, it was on the weekend, it was wild to hear that they had some COVID setbacks now with Jean-Gabriel Pageau and I think it was Noah Dobson, but they still didn't look that out of place. it's fantastic to see like how they're doing it. But we'll see how they handled the injuries, and now with these two important players out.
Yeah, and testament to Barry Trotz, right? I mean, I just he's done it well, and he's done it for a long time, and I don't think any of us should be surprised that it's not smoke and mirrors. He's a hell of a coach. He gets the players like him. He gets the most out of what he has, and he's doing it again with the Islanders. I give full marks to him. Again, those 9 wins are 9 wins, not against the toughest opponents. I think the next 12, 15 games, the next 12 games are going to be much more of a test. And, the proof might be in that pudding. We'll see how they come through these next 12.
The Capitals must be kicking themselves in the butt for letting him go.
You would think, what else could he have done? And one of the, I didn't get it. That's for sure.
Yeah. So a team everybody's angry with right now, and that is the Tampa Bay Championship Lightning. Circumventing the cap, maybe you could say. We all know Tampa's cap problems with such a great team and them having that tax situation in Florida. People are already irked about that situation. But here's another nice loophole that they've used. And, of course, other teams have kind of used it in the past with Patrick Kane on the Blackhawks and other teams that have the salary. They can kind of put players on LTIR, long-term injured reserve. But when you have an MVP type all-star that is Nikita Kucherov off the books for the entire year, and then kind of already announcing, he's practicing already. And it's like, what? He's practicing already? The playoffs is not for 2 months, and he's already training, but you're just going to have him over there practicing before you can actually put him in because of the salary cap. Man, people are angry.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to go by the letter of the rule, they are obligated to put him back on the roster when he is able to play. So, because of the cap considerations that there's going to be a lot of, he's looking for, I read a story on The Athletic today, he's looking really good and he's, but he's not quite there yet. And it's going to be, they're throwing out the message being, the song being sung is that, he'll be back for the playoffs. He's looking pretty good, but he's not there yet. And he's not full contact and he's not this and he's not that. I don't know. It is what it is, and I hate to use that cliche, but I'm a sportscaster, so cliches come with the job description. But it is what it is. I don't think they're cheating. That the rule is there, and the guy's legitimately injured, right? He had the bum hip. He had to have surgery on it. He wasn't going to jump right back into the lineup. And with this kind of screwed up season and the weird schedule, maybe it was a good year to put him on long-term injured reserve where maybe you normally wouldn't have. And yes, isn't it nice and convenient that that's a nice $9.5 million hit on the cap that opens things up, and all of a sudden you have the room to sign Anthony Cirelli, and it's all working out. What a coincidence how nicely it's all working out. So I can understand non-Tampa fans being a little pissed at it, but by and large, I don't have a problem with it. I don't think they're doing anything wrong. They're just they're making the rules work for them the way they can, the same way big corporations do with the tax law. There's an analogy for you.
If teams keep using this loophole and having 2 months or half a year of their superstars not being able to play, are more teams gonna start doing that? And is the league ever gonna step in and say, we gotta put a stop to this? Is it possible or no?
Well, I think looking at it as objectively as possible, I see your point, and I take it on board. But the bottom line is, if you sat down and asked anybody in the Tampa organization, would you rather have Nikita Kucherov in the lineup or not in the lineup, healthy and playing? It's there's only one answer. So I don't see it as becoming a a weapon that teams use to free up cap space. I think that's cutting off your nose to spite your face. If you can have a key player in your lineup in there and playing, that's where you want him. And if you don't have to put him on long-term injured reserve, you're not going to. However, I do think if there's a gray area, then yeah, you might feel a little more inclined to put him on LTIR than not. But I don't think it's going to become I don't think it's going to become as much of a problem as tanking to get a good lottery position pick was. Let me put it that way. I think that was more of a problem, and I think that was more likely and something that teams were a little bit more overt about than fiddling around with LTIR. That's just my opinion.
There is a soap opera going on right now, and I would call it the Canadian division. That North Scotia division is topsy-turvy. It's up and down. I know a lot of people are talking about it. It's wild that we've already have 2 coaches fired. They've brought in Ducharme in Montreal. They brought back Sutter from the farm to coach these Flames. But it seems like every day, every second, every millisecond, there's a fire going on, and then there's a team they're the juggernaut. Right? It's ridiculous how up and down it is. It's already like the Maple Leafs are on fire. They don't know what they're going to do, but I know it was a week ago when they were like, oh, they're going to win the whole thing. And it just seems like every day, every moment, it's a different team that's up and it's a different team that's down. It's exciting. That's for one thing.
I think it's fantastic. Like most Canadian hockey fans, that was by far for me the most intriguing thing heading into this season, which, because of the necessity of having to restructure things because of the global pandemic, we had this, what will most certainly only be a one-off season of all the Canadian teams playing amongst themselves. But that said, I've heard a few other people saying, well, I'm getting a little bit tired of watching the Battle of Alberta so many times, and I'm getting a little tired of watching Montreal and Toronto play so many times. I wouldn't mind seeing Toronto play Buffalo, or I wouldn't mind seeing Montreal play the Bruins, that kind of thing. I like it. I think it's cool. I love the chance to watch Austin Matthews go head to head against Connor McDavid numerous times during a season. Of course, you don't get that. It's usually best you're going to get is a couple of times a year. So I like that, but I don't see it lasting. I mean, it's clearly, it's not, I'll tell you the biggest reason it's not going to last as we sit here right now. 2 of the biggest stars in the league are playing. One is in Edmonton and one is in Toronto. So right off the bat there, that's not going to fly with New York. And New York is that's the dog that wags the tail. So.
Yeah, the Bettman and the league have already said that this is only going to be the one-off, as you mentioned. Is there a workaround that we're missing? Because, again, when we're playing East and West, we basically only see the other team once or twice. Is it possible that they could somehow get at least more games outside of the division, or more games at least for Canadian teams versus each other, East and West?
I suppose there's always the possibility. I know there's a tremendous amount of thought that goes into the NHL schedule. I'm stating the obvious to say there are so many moving parts, building availabilities, but one of the big ones is travel, right? And North America is a big place going from east to west, and that's one of the reasons we have an unbalanced schedule. It makes it, not only does it make the travel easier for the players, but it saves teams a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to charter a plane and fly from Toronto to Vancouver, or that's why the Leafs only go on the Western road trip, right? It's an annual thing. They don't go out there. If you played, let's say you played one another, for sake of argument, you played one another 6 times, 3 at home and 3 on the road. That's extra trips, extra money. And in a league that runs pretty close to the knuckle in terms of budgets, I think that would be a difficult one to swing. From a fan's point of view, would love it. Again, love watching Austin Matthews go out and go head to head against some of the great stars in Vancouver or in Edmonton. That's great to see. But as a practicality, I don't see that happening.
Again, Paul, thank you for joining us. This was a great chat with you. You can follow him on Twitter and his podcast at _Romycast. That's ROMYCAST. Paul, this was a great chat. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for asking. My pleasure, and we'll come back and do it again sometime.
It's time we team ISO the New Jersey Devils. This time on the round table chat for you this week, we have Robert Aitken Jr. He's a sports writer on North Jersey and Varsity Aces. You can find him on Twitter at Robert Aitken Jr. We also have Trey Matthews. He covers the Devils at the Hockey Writers and Locked on Devils podcast. You can find him on Twitter at TreyMatt4. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Thanks, guys. And of course, all this information will be on our website, jablamsports.com. This episode specifically, Season 6, Episode 14. We've got even a recent article about Jack Hughes on the Hockey Writers there, so you can check that one out. And things, of course, getting to it with the Devils, aren't looking so great for them this year. One win in the last 10 when I checked. And as we're recording this, I believe they're playing right now against the lowly Sabres. So is this, I guess, a fight for the basement?
Oh, man, you do listen to my podcast. Because I call them the lowly Sabres. You do listen to my podcast.
Yes, I do some research. And even before we got on recording this, I checked out the article on USA Today on yourself and your idol. So I did check that out, and I think you can also check that out on Trey's Twitter page info. It's on there, and that's how I found it. So that's pretty great story to hear for you, Trey. But let's get into the Devils that are struggling. They lost a tight battle against the Islanders, who were on fire, so that was pretty close. They're second last in goals. Taylor Hall and Blake Coleman are gone from last year. Nico Hischier is out. But what's going on with Travis Zajac? Only 2 goals on the season, Robert?
Well, for Travis, obviously, as you know, the Devils went through some COVID protocols at the end of January. Mm-hmm. And I think Travis was really one of the hardest hit personally from COVID. You can even say things about Mackenzie Blackwood. I'm sure we'll talk about him in a little bit. Travis really seems like it took him a little bit of time to get himself back from COVID protocol. Probably harder hit than most players on that team.
And we know that the Devils have had a tough time with it, and even with the whole Sabres thing, that was another thing on itself. What have you heard with the rest of the team? Have most of them recovered? How are they looking out there?
It's kind of a mixed bag depending on who you have. I mean, granted, it's the second youngest team in the NHL behind the Rangers, but you still have some veterans there, Kyle Palmieri, PK Subban, and Zajac included, where those guys might have been a little more effective than some of the other 22, 23-year-old people on that team. For Zajac, it seems like he's kind of getting his footing under himself now. He's skating a little bit better. It's hard footing. And if you've watched any of the games since they've come back, they've had a lot of losses, but a lot of moral victories. The problem is that the standings don't really have a spot for moral victories. And if there was, then they'd probably be in a playoff spot right now.
They also are doing fairly poorly on the special teams. I think they're fourth last on the power play, second last on the penalty kill. Miles Wood is the only one who has more than 1 goal on the power play with just 2. The PK has been interesting when I was looking at the stats. A lot of young guys on there, like Michael McLeod. I know him, of course, from playing with, I think it was Mississauga, so I've seen a couple of his games when he was a prospect. and even newcomer from the Belarusian drafted in 2018. How do you pronounce his name? Yegor
It would be Yegor Sharangovich.
Sangovich?
Sharangovich.
All right.
Yep.
So he hasn't looked too out of place in his rookie year. What have you liked from his game so far, Trey?
Sharangovich, just if you look at the Boston Bruins game, first game of the year, he drew 3 penalties for the New Jersey Devils. He was just putting his body on the line. He was being a rag doll out there. And that's what I really liked about him. And I was just like, this kid is really showing a lot of effort and determination in order to, solidify his position, because that's the one thing. The Devils have a lot of first-year players, including Sharangovich. We got Yanni Folkenen, obviously Ty Smith, who's one of the best rookies out east right now. So overall, I just like what Sharangovich did, especially he got his first goal in OT, a game winner, like against the Boston Bruins, and they're the reigning President's Trophy winners from last season. So overall, I just like what Sharangovich does for our team. Just even if he doesn't do a lot in the stat sheet, I know his effort is there. And when he does do something, it just makes it all more impressive. And I think Robert can vouch for me on this. I think Sharangovich has already become a fan favorite.
Absolutely. I mean, we were, I think every writer on the beat was riding high on Sharangovich, even in training camp. And he was really a guy to watch. So to see him get his first NHL goal literally in the final second of overtime against the Bruins in the second game, people were ordering Sharangovich jerseys, I think, right after that.
I literally renamed my show Locked On Sharangovich for like a week.
How does that name fit on a jersey?
Very carefully.
I've seen crazier. Like if we're talking MLB, there was a player named Saltalamacchia. So and that went from like below the armpit to below the armpit. So I mean, it's hockey. You need a very confusing foreign last name that no one could pronounce. That's hockey for you. I really literally only see it in hockey. I don't see it. You see it in some other sports, but not too many. But like in hockey, a lot of confusing names.
Oh, I loved watching Jamie Langenbrunner as well on the Devils and the Stars. We'll get some more prospect information in a tad bit from Trey. In the offseason for goaltending, they brought in Corey Schneider. Bought out Corey Schneider, and brought in Corey Crawford, who, of course, had to retire right before the season began. But goaltending, it seems like it hasn't been as big of an issue, interestingly enough. Wedgwood has looked fairly good, and Mackenzie Blackwood started off fairly well. Robert, is Blackwood the future of this team?
I think he is. This was supposed to be a very big season for Blackwood. He was supposed to be the everyday starter in net. He was, like you said, the first couple of games was among the best in terms of save percentage. And really just what happened was the COVID hit, and he got hit with the virus. He went to protocol before the team did. Mm-hmm. And his impact on the team has been, I would say that things kind of derailed for the team once Mackenzie Blackwood went into COVID protocol. He's come back. He has not given up less than 2 goals since. But I spoke to Lindy Ruff after the game against the Islanders on Saturday, and I said, is this the best you've seen Mackenzie look since he's come back? And he agreed with me. It seems like he's finally getting his footing back, but it was a big issue with him. I think he was probably one of the hardest hit in the entire league, not even just the Devils.
Now, I know you guys aren't used to having poor goaltending as the most of the rest of us in the league for so many years. Of course, having the amazing Martin Bertour between the pipes, and then transitioning to Corey Schneider, who was pretty good until not so great the last year. How are you feeling now, not so easy, with not having such a great goaltender between the pipes for your organization?
I don't mean to cut Robert off or anything, but I just want to answer this. I feel as though our goaltending is going to get better. And here's the thing that I've been saying on my show a lot, and I don't know how recent you've been listening to the episodes, but overall, I really like Scott Wedgwood. Like, I am a huge fan of what he's been able to do because in his first season debut against the Islanders, yes, he lost. But look at it this way. The Devils let up a few power play goals, and also they let an open breakaway happen within the final seconds of period number 1. And, you know, they left their netminder very vulnerable in that case when you allow an open breakaway and things of that nature. So I think the Islanders ended up winning that game 4-1, but I'd say 75% of those goals were not Wedgwood's fault. It was just that, you know, it's not his fault that his team went into the penalty kill and they're down a man and now they're vulnerable and they don't know how to, you know, blast the puck down the other way. They don't know how to clear the puck. They don't know how to just overall kill time on the penalty kill. So overall, I just said I don't think that loss could have been blamed on Scott Wedgwood. He's been solid. Like, this guy, prior to that Islanders game, he had not played in the NHL in like 3 years. Like, he's a career minor leaguer. And despite being on the roster for the Tampa Bay Lightning last year and, you know, being a part of that organization that won the Stanley Cup Finals, Scott Wedgwood doesn't really have a lot to rely on. So overall, I think Mackenzie Blackwood has potential, but like Robert said, it was really bad for Mackenzie once he got COVID. And I was really on the high horse that he might win the Vezina Trophy and that Ty Smith could win the Calder Memorial Trophy. But I just said the Devils had to finish in a respectable position, but I think both of their chances have pretty much, like our season, died down.
Are you in the same boat there, Robert? Do you think that Blackwood would be in contention for Vezina this year if he was fully healthy?
Yeah, had he not gone into COVID protocol, I firmly believe he would be in that conversation with a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury in terms of being in a Vezina race right now. He was, even when he came back and he was still struggling, letting up 3 or 4 goals a night, he was still among the top leaders in the NHL in save percentage. That shows how dominant he was to begin the season.
That's eye-opening to me. I know he was doing really well at the beginning, and you think he could last that long with those numbers in this tough division? Like, it's a division where I don't know how the top bracket is in terms of being like a top 8 competitor going to the finals for sure, but in terms of the fight for a playoff spot, this has got to be the hardest division out.
No question. Like I was talking about on my show just this morning, for the East out in the NHL, there's nowhere to hide. Like, the 2 teams that are pretty much out of the playoff hunt are us and the Buffalo Sabres. The Rangers still realistically have a chance to, you know, get into that conversation. They're down, but they're not out. So, you know, to give you some reference, here's the standings right now. You got the Islanders, who are 19-6-4 with 42 points. The Capitals are 18-6-4 with 40 points. Penguins 18-9-1 with 37 points. Bruins are 14-8-4 with 32 points. Flyers are 14-9-3 with 31 points. And then here come the Rangers. They're 11-12-4 with 26 points. So while down, they're not out. So, you know, overall, the East Division is just really, really, really tough. There's nowhere to hide if you're a team like the New Jersey Devils.
Is this season all but done for the Devils in terms of trying to make that playoff spot?
Unfortunately, I just don't see us getting any momentum going our way. We've tried. Like, you know, when we came back from COVID, I was like, okay, we're still doing really well. Like, I was like, we're still in this. We might be down, but we're certainly not out. But I don't know what Robert's opinion was, but to begin the season, I thought the Devils had a chance to maybe just get that 4th spot and maybe upset a lot of teams and just overall sneak their way into the playoffs. Or I said before the season started, I said if all goes well for the New Jersey Devils, they'll finish 5th in the division. Yes, they would miss the playoffs, but that's still significant improvement. So, but as of right now, I just don't see it. We're just not consistent enough, and it looks like we've given up.
I agree with Trey. It felt like, but they had an opportunity to be, you know, maybe that 5th, possibly the 4th team in the East and sneak into the playoffs, maybe, you know, punch a little above their weight class. But once COVID hit that team and they were shut down for more than 2 weeks, it really felt like a lot of the wind was taken out of their sails. It impacted their scheduling. They're playing 4 times a week. They're practicing the full team practice maybe once a week. And with a young team, when you can't practice consistently and fix mistakes, it's a recipe for disaster.
New GM Tom Fitzgerald has some moves to make in this offseason, but maybe even as soon as the trade deadline. Who could he move, Robert? I'm already hearing rumors of Palmieri, maybe even to the Leafs.
I mean, there are veterans on this team that you could still move. There are guys like Palmieri. I know some people would probably even throw out Zajac as a possibility, although I think that would break the hearts of Devils fans the way that Andy Green being moved broke the hearts of Devils fans a year ago. Honestly, anyone on that team that is over the age of 25 probably is within reason of possibly being moved. I would argue against moving just about anybody on that team. It's still a young team, and it's still a gelling team. You have to look at with the performance that the teams have had. You have to outweigh the impact that player has on the young guys on the team right now. Weigh that with what you would possibly get back from a team who's looking to make a push at the Cup. And for me personally, I think it might be better to kind of stand pat and just develop.
One player I thought in particular has played fairly well, and that I think a lot of fans of the team didn't expect much from him after maybe not so great of a season last year, and that's Pavel Zacha. Has he impressed you guys a lot, Trey?
That line of Zacha, Heiser, and Brock really impressed me. Like Zacha, he's been on a little bit of a hot streak the last few games. Like I said, it's kind of hard to take away any positives from the New Jersey Devils, especially with how they've been playing. But I think Pavel Zacha, at one point during the season, he had like 4 goals in 7 games. So he's definitely making strides, in my opinion, to get better. And, he has 17 points on the year, 7 goals, 10 assists in 25 games played. So overall, I think he's doing pretty well for what he's being given right now. But like I said, with Heiser going down, it really ruined that special line of him and Brock together, because I really thought that line was just really effective, like extremely effective, especially I believe in the Sabres game, actually, just a few weeks ago. So last year, he had 8 goals and 24 assists for 32 points, and that was in 65 games played. And he's already on pace to get past that and score more goals and maybe not get as many assists. But, like I said, so it's a long season. And with how the Devils have been scoring recently, it can really come, not at a premium for him.
Let's talk about some bright spots, and I know a lot of people out there think the Devils have some of the brightest futures among all the NHL organizations. And I remember last year in February, wow, that seems like ages ago already, but the New Jersey Devils traded Blake Coleman to Tampa Bay for a first-round pick and a first-round prospect in Nolan Foote. Nolan was outstanding for the Kelowna Rockets and won gold in the World Juniors for Team Canada that year. Trey, what do you like most about the big kid?
Well, he's the son of Adam Foote, who has his number retired by the Colorado Avalanche. So he has big shoes to fill. And his father, if I recall, won a couple Stanley Cups. So big shoes to fill if you're Nolan Foote. But obviously, we can't compare the son to the kid, because obviously his dad is always going to be better in this case, because, it's usually either the father or the son that's better. But anyway, going on to what I'm seeing from Nolan. So in 11 games played for the Binghamton Devils, he has 3 goals, 5 assists for a grand total of 8 points. So already, he's doing pretty well. And I think the future is bright for the New Jersey Devils. And right now, people just need to shift their focus on to the younger guys. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Foote. I'm liking what I'm seeing from Walsh. And honestly, I think the New Jersey Devils might have struck gold with Foote. So honestly, I think, and with Foote coming from a hockey family similar to Jack Hughes, it certainly does help. So overall, I think Foote can really contribute well because he's a 6'4" winger. Honestly, yeah.
It was funny that you mentioned his dad, because immediately when I saw a Nolan Foote, and even when he was drafted by Tampa, I immediately for some reason thought he was a defenseman, because I'm like, it's his son. He must be he's a big, huge, hulking kid. I'm thinking automatically he's a defenseman. Then when I heard he was a winger, I was quite surprised at that size, too.
Yeah, he's impressive, and he also let's see, didn't he win? I'm pretty sure he won gold one year playing. So yeah, he has a lot of potential, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him being called up one day. And another kid that I want to talk about, and you're probably going to bring him up anyway, is Riley Walsh, the defenseman from Harvard. Yeah. So here's my hot take about Riley Walsh, and I wrote an article about this for the Hockey Writers. I feel as though if Riley Walsh gets the opportunity to be coached by Lindy Ruff, then in all honesty, he can become the next Adam Fox.
Wow.
Because who was his teammate at Harvard? Who led the team in points? Both him and Adam Fox. And who was Adam Fox coached by last season? And Adam Fox was a star of that sorry defensive unit for the New York Rangers.
Wow.
So, and who was the coach then? Lindy Ruff.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think the apple falls too far from the tree. I believe Riley Walsh will become the next Adam Fox if he's coached under Lindy Ruff. And I think it's very likely that, Lindy Ruff can stay for like maybe a year or two, depending on how the Devils do and how the younger guys respond to him. I think it's a real possibility that Riley Walsh can be coached under Lindy Ruff.
That was a good comment that you had to have there. And Robert, let me ask you this. Do you think Lindy Ruff will be here for the full rebuild for the Devils?
It depends on how long the rebuild lasts. I think that Lindy Ruff will be here for maybe another 2, maybe 3 years. I don't see him necessarily being around that much longer, but you can already feel the impact he's had on the young team. And if he's not here for the full rebuild, I think you're going to see his fingerprints on a lot of the way that these guys play. He's pushed a lot of aggressiveness and speed. You can see just already the evolution of a guy like Miles Wood and the way that he's been able to play. Miles Wood's only 25 years old, and yet you feel like he's been around in the league for 10 years. But he's approaching, even in a shortened season, probably he's on pace, I believe, for career highs in points. He's not taking as many penalties. He's not being the Miles Wood that everyone expects him to be, but he's being a leader on this team. And I think that that's really the Lindy Ruff effect on this team.
You can find Robert on Twitter at Robert Aitken Jr. and you can find Trey on Twitter as well at TreyMatt4. Gentlemen, thank you for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks to the great Paul Romanuk for dropping by this week. It made my month having him here and getting to talk about all those great stories around the World Juniors and Spengler Cup. Also, thank you to Trey Matthews and Robert Aitken Jr. for stopping by to discuss the Devils situation. They have a bright future, and I really like the looks of what they can build on here. But I'm not really sold on Blackwood yet, so we'll have to keep an eye on him. Remember, if you've enjoyed anything you've heard in this episode, or don't, please tweet at me or even our guests. You can follow me on Twitter at Russia98 or the entire team at Jablam Sports. If you want, you can also contact us on our website. You can use the hashtag at Jablam Sports, Jablam Sports, that's JABLAM, and our website is jablamsports.com/contact for our contact page there. Please check out our website. Go to jablamsports.com to see all our podcasts and even game notes for each episode, including this one. And you'll get our guests' info and links to things we mentioned on this show. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify. And of course, click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app and share this episode with 3 friends you know. Please and thank you. Also, follow us on our Facebook group, Jablam Sports. Check us out, folks. Thank you, everyone. Shout out. This week's shout out is to Kim Geddes. She's a news director and an excellent one at that. If you're looking for someone to direct or edit the news, look no further than Kim. She joined my program this past week, Sports Journalism at Centennial, and she helped edit and lead our team as we covered Team Canada's women's and men's wheelchair basketball teams as they gear up for the Tokyo Olympics. Thank you, Kim, for your professionalism, hard work, and really taking the time to help our team and myself. I learned a lot. And to every one of our listeners, I'm giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy, listen, be yourself, and stay strong.